Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, I want to go over some news and some notes about the Toronto Maple Leafs over the last week and a half or so from their last couple of games, and then talk about things moving forward after the Christmas break. So let's jump into it. Going into this game against the New York Rangers, the Maple Leafs had a 15-game point streak where they were 11-0-4. They were the hottest team in the league, and they were going to suffer a regulation loss eventually. Mitch Marner's point streak was going to come to an end eventually, and it just happened to come in this game against the Rangers that was played pretty evenly, but the Maple Leafs didn't get a couple of bounces to go their way. Igor Shesterkin played quite well, and the Rangers got a timely 2-goal performance from Jimmy Vesey, Jimmy Vanilla, who I'm going to start calling Jimmy Two Scoops because he scored 2 goals in this game. It was one game where the Leafs looked kind of human against a team that was surging themselves. The Rangers just had a win streak of their own, get snapped by the Penguins last night, where they had won their previous 7 games, and Shesterkin was probably playing his best hockey of the entire year. Moving on to the game against the Washington Capitals, and you got Ilya Samsonov in net, and he's playing his former team in Washington for the very first time, and Alexander Ovechkin is right on the edge of tying Gordie Howe for the second most goals in NHL history with 801, and Eric Gustafsson scores a hat trick. Probably the least likely Capital to do that, but hey, goofy games happen like that sometimes, and the Leafs didn't really play the greatest defensively in front of Samsonov, but there were some interesting comments from him after the game. Samsonov saying, "I have nervous, a lot of emotion, the result, not too great." And maybe that's not what you want to hear from your goaltender playing in a game that was obviously emotional for him, playing in Washington for the very first time, his former team. But I can understand why it was made a story in Toronto, because Jack Campbell was our goaltender just last season, and that was a roller coaster of emotions, one that I'm sure the Edmonton Oilers want to get off of. We saw Campbell beat himself up for having similar performances to what Samsonov did against the Capitals, but at the same time, it was just one game. Right? And the guy is just 25 years old, and he's also still second in the NHL in save percentage. So if you're asking me if I'm nervous about that one game or if I'm worried about him long term, no. He's 25 years old, and he's played just over 100 games at the NHL level, so he's definitely not a prospect anymore, but he is a younger player looking to establish himself, and to this point in his career, there's nothing really to suggest that he can't handle big game moments like that. I mean, he's got a silver and a bronze medal at the World Junior Championships, but in those tournaments, he's got a save percentage over 930, and he's also a Gagarin Cup champion over in the KHL, and his save percentage during that playoff run was 920. So he was great there as well. He's very, very talented, obviously, because he's second in the NHL in save percentage. If he maybe needs to work on being a little bit more mentally tough at the NHL level, then I guess we'll work with him. It's not something that I'm nervous or worried about right now, as long as we see some development there from him, and I have faith that he will. That's why the Maple Leafs have a goaltending tandem, right? And the second part of that tandem happens to be 2-time Stanley Cup champion Matt Murray, who's playing just as well as Samsonov is right now. He's 6th in the NHL in save percentage. And if Matt Murray can maybe show Samsonov a bit of the ropes and some of that confidence and big game energy can rub off on him, then great. But right now, I'm not too worried. But moving off of that, going into the game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, since the start of November, the Leafs were 15-3-4. But even though they were absolutely one of the hottest teams in the NHL, they had only had 3 more points than the Tampa Bay Lightning over that same time period. So these were 2 of the best teams in the league playing each other, and yet the Maple Leafs absolutely steamrolled them in terms of the shot attempt share, the actual shots, the scoring opportunities, the high danger shot attempt share, the expected goals. I believe at one point in the game, the shots were like 25-5 midway through the second period or something like that. It was the Toronto Maple Leafs versus Andrei Vasilevskiy, and Vasilevskiy was keeping them in the game, but the Leafs just eventually ended up pulling away at some point. They dominated them. And that was mostly because the Maple Leafs' top 2 lines came to play. They got excellent performances from both Austin Matthews and Michael Bunting, who even got into it with a linesman towards the end of the game. He extended his point streak to 10 games. He's been absolutely on fire the last little while. They got Kalle Järnkrok back from injury last night, and I really liked his play on that second line with both John Tavares and Mitch Marner. I mean, ever since he's gotten an opportunity to play in the top six there, he's got 4 points in those 5 games, and that includes one that he ended up leaving early because of the injury. Previous to that, he just had 6 points in his first 21 games with the team, and he was kind of playing on just mix match leftover lines, but it also sounds like he was dealing with that groin injury for a while before he ended up missing some time with it. So that could explain the bit of a slow start to the season. And if that's the case, and we're going to see a player closer to what he was when he was with the Predators for all those years, that's going to be a huge add to this team. Because if you go back and watch the video that we did when the Maple Leafs first signed him, this was a guy who struggled last year with Seattle and then struggled with Calgary after he was acquired in that trade. But both teams, they weren't really using him in the roles that he was successful with the Predators in. And that was being a complementary piece to a scoring line in the top six. Just a guy that works hard and plays smart. But speaking of that second line, some people have pointed out that John Tavares only has 5 points in his last 11 games, just 2 goals, and he's kind of cooled down or come back down to earth after that ridiculous start to the season that he had. But if we're looking at the underlying numbers over those last 11 games have actually improved over that time span when he was absolutely on fire. And I'm not saying that he's been actually better over the last 11 games where he's not scoring as much, because John Tavares is paid to score goals and put up points, but I wouldn't be as concerned about it because those underlying numbers are really strong. But then again, that's been the case with John Tavares for the last couple of seasons, where the underlying numbers compared to the actual results are kind of disappointing. And I don't mean that he's bad, it's just that the underlying numbers suggest that he's a dominant player, one of the best players in the league. But when you look at the actual goals for and goals against, the Maple Leafs are getting outscored when he's on the ice, and that's disappointing. But I do have faith that he'll turn it around. I mean, players go through ruts all the time where just bounces don't go their ways, and maybe, maybe he's off a bit. This is a guy that's still on pace for 34 goals and well over 70 points, which is great considering he's only playing 17 and a half minutes a night. I mean, maybe if they gave him another minute or two there, he'd be closer to 80 or 90 points and 40 goals in a season. This is a guy who's very consistent, so I'm not too worried about him. That Tampa Bay Lightning game had me feeling really good, but I'm also a Leaf fan, so you can't feel too great about the good things that are going on, because Rasmus Sandin left that game midway through, and he's not going to be playing tomorrow or Thursday against the Philadelphia Flyers. They're going to shut him down for the Christmas break and reevaluate the neck injury that he suffered. There wasn't anything that was super apparent that happened during the game, so it might just be them being cautious with him. It really is starting to get comical, the amount of injuries the Maple Leafs have suffered on the blue line. They're still without Morgan Rielly. Jordy Ben is just coming back from his injury that he suffered after playing well, after coming back from an injury himself. But it's been a real breath of fresh air. Connor Timmins has stepped into this lineup, and he's gotten more and more comfortable the more games that he's played, the more minutes that he's gotten, and he's had an opportunity to play with TJ Brody the last little while, and it's looking like it's starting to rub off on him. There was a 2-on-1 opportunity yesterday where he laid down and did like a butterfly thing, and that's what TJ Brody does all the time. And if you're looking at the underlying numbers for a guy like Connor Timmins, a right-handed shooting defenseman, over 6 feet tall, over 200 pounds, they've been absolutely spectacular so far this season with the Maple Leafs. I know it's just been 7 games, but can we have some fun with this? The Leafs are rarely on the side of trades like this where it just works out. I mean, Curtis Douglas, I wish him well, but that guy's got 3 points in 21 American Hockey League games right now. The fact that the Leafs were able to get a right-handed shooting defenseman that's over 6 feet tall, over 200 pounds, and plays the way that Connor Timmins does, the way that he has so far, unbelievable. The only question that remains when it comes to Timmins is, can he stay healthy? Because that's been a problem for him to this point in his career. It was probably the only reason why the Maple Leafs were able to acquire him for that cheap in the first place. Can he stay healthy on a team where everyone around him is absolutely dropping like flies? I wanted to talk about Connor Timmins before I talked about the Dennis Malgin for Dryden Hunt trade because the Maple Leafs originally acquired Dennis Malgin for Mason Marchment, and that was a trade that they just weren't on the right side of. So, you win some, you lose some, right? But Dryden Hunt, who is he? And just over 6 feet tall and over 190 pounds, he's not necessarily the biggest forward out there, but he does play with a lot of tenacity, and he is a better defensive guy. This is a clip of him absolutely leveling David Pastrnak and then beating up Thomas Nosek. I can't play it for you, but if you wanted to check it out, I'll leave it linked in the description of the video. Like we said, he's a good defensive forward that provides little to no offense at all. The best way to think about him is he's very similar to a guy like Zach Aston Reese. When he's out there, nothing really happens at all. And sometimes that's all you need from your guys in the bottom six. But also, I think the Maple Leafs recognize that you can't have too many of those guys down there because then your lineup isn't the most balanced. And that has been a problem for them in the past, where either all of their scoring in the playoffs comes from their depth players or all of it comes from their top end guys. So that's going to be an area that they're going to need to address as we get closer to the deadline. But we're seeing here Dryden Hunt drawing into the lineup tomorrow against the Philadelphia Flyers. And the compromise to that is that Zach Aston Reese is going to sit out a game. And it's a shame that things didn't work out for Malgin here because he profiles like a player that you would want to have on your team. He's a good skater. He's shifty in transition. He can really move the puck up off the rush. But with just 4 points in 23 games and none in his last 11 games, he was given an opportunity to play in that top six next to John Tavares and Mitch Marner, and it just didn't work. And for a guy like Malgin, if all he's going to provide is good defense in your bottom six, I would rather have the bigger forward in Dryden Hunt who's going to provide that same defense, but with some more tenacity. So hopefully it works out for him in Colorado, but I can understand why the Maple Leafs made this move. After their win against the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Maple Leafs are 16-3-4 since the start of November, and they find themselves tied for second in the NHL right now. It just also happens to work out that they play in the same division as the Boston Bruins, who are first in the league. So they're second in their division, and they would end up playing the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, the Boston Bruins are on pace to have the single best regular season ever. They're on pace for 137 points, 5 better than the 1970s Montreal Canadiens record of 132. It's just, of course, it would work out that way. So as we talked about in the video, the thing with Ilya Samsonov feeling nervous playing against his former team, not necessarily something to worry about now, but it is something to look for as we move throughout the year. John Tavares slowing down a little bit, but also he's had a bit of a carousel in terms of the line mates that he's played with this year. If it's going to be Yarncroke and Marner for the next little while, hopefully some consistency leads to him putting the points back up that he was to start the year. And then, the injuries keep on coming, but guys keep stepping up. They didn't play the greatest defensively against the Capitals. There are little blemishes here and there, but overall, 16-3-4 since the start of November. They're turning, it's just one good month into, now it's just 2 good months. And hopefully that trend can continue as we move into 2023. Hopefully it can be, now it's 3 good months. Now it's 4 good months, and they can ride that the rest of the way because they're playing awesome right now. So that's going to be the end of the video, guys. Make sure to like it if you did like it, and subscribe for more because more is always on the way. And guys, I'll see you in the next one.